Hi, today I'm sharing 8 signs that you are ready to make the jump out of your comfort zone. Hi, I'm Nile Harris, a life strategist, business consultant, and speaker working with growing entrepreneurs and professionals to pursue their passion with a plan by gaining clarity, setting goals, and getting things done. But before we get started with the 8 signs that you are more ready than you think you are to make the jump out of your comfort zone, take a moment to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on the alerts so you know when I post new content. And join me in the discussion and on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at I am Nile Harris. You can also catch me on LinkedIn at Nile Harris, and I look forward to continuing this conversation. So the 8 signs that you are more ready than you think you are to make the jump out of your comfort zone. I want to begin by sharing my own story. I one day went to the doctor, mundane visit, and the nurse takes my vitals. The doctor comes in and she looks very concerned, and she's asking me if I'm okay. Do I feel all right? Am I in pain? Does my chest hurt? I find these questions really odd, but the answer was no to all of them. I felt fine. I wasn't there for anything other than or just routine. And she informed me that my blood pressure was 170 over 110. And I was in a hypertensive crisis. Now, normal blood pressure, for if you don't know, is 120 over 80, or at least that's the upper range of normal. And with 170 over 110 is really the range where she would hospitalize me. So she was very reluctant, not reluctant, she would not let me leave until my blood pressure came down. I had a regular physician, and so I knew my blood pressure had been a little elevated, but this was a lot elevated. And there were no other reasons for my blood pressure to be this high. Blood tests, came back normal before this point. Everything was fine. I exercised. I think I had actually run a couple of miles that morning, or at least hiked a couple of miles that morning. There was no other reason for my blood pressure to have been this high except for one thing, and I knew what it was immediately. And it was my job. And I was miserable. I was working for someone doing something that I relatively liked, but I didn't like the environment. And in fact, it was rather toxic, and it wasn't a great environment. I didn't feel valued, respected, and at times it felt abusive. And I realized that I was just a misery, but the thing about it was, here I was somebody who had moved to Europe on 2 weeks notice for an international assignment where I lived there for months. I went to the Middle East to go see the Nile River by myself for 2 weeks. I started in Jordan and met up with a group there, a group of strangers. I had always been someone that made jumps, that made leaps. Whether I should have or not, is under question. But I had always had that courageous spirit, that wandering spirit, that I'm going to try something regardless of how I think it's going to turn out. Was I scared? Sure. Did I do it anyway? Absolutely. But here I was in this situation where my blood pressure was so high, and literally being in this situation was killing me, but I was afraid to leave. I was afraid to quit without another job. I was afraid to make a jump without having something lined up. I'm a planner. I like to think, as a strategist, I like to think ahead. And so this was something that, just go out there and do it. So I thought about a time when I was young. I was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8, and I'd gone with my mom to visit a friend of hers in Indiana. And we were one morning walking along the Indiana shore of Lake Michigan. There was no one else out there. It was kind of an overcast day, and the waves were really high. And I picked up this stick and I waded out into the water, and I started beating the waves with this stick. And I was just having a ball. I didn't care about anything else. I didn't care about the rest of Lake Michigan. Only the part of Lake Michigan that was right in front of me that I could impact. And I reflected on how brave I was as a little kid to just sort of wander out into the water just a little bit and start beating these waves and just really thinking about what was right in front of me. And I thought about what was right in front of me. I had been doing a side hustle for years, and I had a fear of making my side hustle my main hustle. I had a fear of, trying to do something new or something different. And it was in this moment on that drive home with my blood pressure had come down, which is why I was allowed to leave. My blood pressure had come down. And I realized that I was more afraid to stay in this situation than I was to leave it. So I quit. So that's how I knew when it was my sign. It was time for me to make a jump into doing something that I enjoy. And I enjoy being a strategist. I enjoy helping people pursue their passion with a plan. I enjoy helping people pursue their dreams and setting goals and getting things done, because I believe that, the world is filled with dreamers, and, dreams change the world. And so I want to be a part of helping other people make their dreams manifest. So with that said, that was when I knew it was time for me to make the jump. So how do you know when it's time for you to make the jump? And I'm sharing these 8 signs that you might be ready to step out of your comfort zone more than you think you are. You probably don't think you are, and you're saying, no, I'm not ready. You are probably more ready than you think you are, and you're probably just talking yourself out of it. So sign number 1, you can't stop daydreaming about it. Whatever it is, you find yourself throughout the day sort of checking out and thinking about what life will look like when you achieve this dream. You think about also the journey. You don't necessarily just think about the end result, but you think about getting a logo for your business, or filing for an LLC, or, working late, or, you think about not just the destination, but you daydream about the journey. You daydream about, if it's about being a speaker, standing on stage and talking to an arena full of people, or maybe you're an artist and you are thinking about having a gallery full of your artwork or your photography. Whatever it is, you can't stop daydreaming about it. You catch yourself in the middle of meetings. I know I used to sort of fade out in the middle of meetings, just thinking about, working with individuals, working with small businesses, coaching professionals, and watching them flourish and grow. Number 2, and I love this one, you are sick and tired of being sick and tired. There's not much more to say about this, but that's where I was. As I was driving home in this car, I really thought about this predicament that I found myself in, but I started doing the math. It wasn't just that job. It was the job before it and the job before it. When I finished doing the little mental calculations in my head, I had been for 8 years waiting for some breakthrough at my job, some doing what I was told to do, doing what I was asked to do, outperforming, doing the training, doing my professional development plan, doing my reviews, networking, doing all these things, waiting for somebody to bestow me with the honor of advancing, or the honor of the next title or the next role. And I've been waiting for 8 years, basically sticking it out for 8 years. And I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of sticking it out. And if you are feeling that way, if you are feeling like you've done what you're supposed to be doing, that maybe where you're at isn't where you're supposed to be, but you have family, you have parents or other people who rely on you, and you're worried about what that means, taking that risk and putting things at risk. But you're just also tired of being in the situation that you're in. Sign number 3. Fear of staying where you are is greater than the fear of change. And like I said, this is where I was. This is when I was driving home, I realized, God, I don't think I can stay in this situation. I'm afraid of what's going to happen. I'm afraid I'll get sicker. I'm afraid my blood pressure will not come down, even under medical management. I'm afraid that the situation will become more toxic. I'm afraid of who I have to be in order to endure the situation. I have to be silent. I can't really contribute my full ideas. I can't really bring myself into the situation. And I don't want that. I want to be who I am. I want to share my gifts. And there's always a degree of learning and coming up the curve, of course. But if you are not being allowed to come up the curve, I actually had a manager once, and this isn't the job I'm speaking of, but I had a manager who, in my first few months was basically like, well, you're not performing and you're underperforming. And I said, well, it's been a couple months. This is a completely different industry. And I know the transferable skills down, but I'm trying to learn this new industry. And he wasn't willing to teach me. And it was really interesting. He wasn't willing to be a participant, even as my leader. He was not interested in me coming to him with questions or providing resources. I can do all the self-study in the world, and I was fine with that. But anyway, my point was, I wasn't afraid of change at that point, because the change was going to be a lot less painful than staying in the situation. So number 4, you feel awake. What do I mean by that? You become hyper aware of everything around you. Think of a movie that you've seen repeatedly. You know the dialogue, you know what's going to happen. You could recite this movie word for word as it goes. But for some reason, every time you watch it, you notice something a little different. And I was watching Boomerang the other day, the movie with Eddie Murphy. And for some reason, I've seen this movie, I don't know how many hundreds of times. But for some reason, when I was watching it a couple days ago, I noticed or realized that the 3 main characters, so Eddie Murphy's character and his 2 friends, that they all work at the same company. In one of the opening scenes, they're all in the same building together. But in the rest of the movie, even though they're hanging out together, I never really got the sense that they worked together, because they were never in any other meetings together. They were never in any other activities around work. It was Eddie Murphy and Robin Givens and Halle Berry. And then you would see Marcus darling, go and be with his friends, right? But there's a scene in the beginning of the movie where they're all in the same building together, and all in the same office building together. So that's what I mean by being awake. You go through life every day. You drive to the office, you drive home, you drive where you're going, but you start noticing things you never noticed before. Maybe you notice that there's a park near your office that has been there the whole time, but you never noticed it. Or maybe there's a store that you've never noticed, or people that you want to meet, or organizations that you never knew existed. And all of a sudden, all of these things are coming at you, and you're seeing them, and you're feeling like there's a world of possibility that's opening up for you. But then you realize that possibility was there the whole time. You're just now becoming awake to it. Number 5, you get the sense that more exists, that there is more to life. And this is kind of along the lines with the awake. You're starting to see or wonder, really, is there more to life than this? Other people do other things. There are other people who, haven't done as much or have as much education, haven't had as much experience at work, haven't done half the things that you've done, and are having very different experiences, according to social media, which is a whole different topic. They're living their best lives. And you're like, am I? But you're starting to question, and this kind of gets around, maybe, you're in your midlife, you're a Gen Xer, and you're starting to question, gosh, is there more to this? And that's good. Follow those questions, because there is more that exists. Your gift might be, if you haven't realized your gift, or maybe you've realized your gift and you know your gift, but you're not being able to explore your gift in the ways that you want to, and you're ready to write that book or open up a restaurant or, go for a new job, right? Maybe it's not about being an entrepreneur. Maybe it's not about being that on your own. Maybe you're wanting to switch industries. Maybe you're ready for a promotion and you are getting your ducks in a row to go in and pursue a job that maybe it's a stretch assignment. Maybe you don't meet 100% of the qualifications. Whatever it is, you are starting to realize that more exists outside of yourself. Number 6, others around you aren't growing. You are the company you keep. You are the books that you read. You are the sum total of your choices in the past. And if you are starting to be awake and you are starting to question yourself and think about things, and you are talking to the folks around you and you realize that they're not doing the same thing. They're not awake. They're not questioning. They're not striving for more. They're not growing. They're not learning. And these are the same people maybe you've been hanging around with for a long time and you're just now noticing it. And you are finding yourself gravitating toward people who are doing what you want to do, or people who are just doing more things. At some point I realized I was surrounded around a bunch of entrepreneurs or people who, had a 9 to 5 and a side hustle. I just found myself sort of naturally gravitating toward that and surrounding myself and creating a community of people around me. And so you're starting to look at that community of people around you and questioning the level of conversation you're having. And maybe you're talking about those dreams that you're daydreaming about and they're telling you, oh, you can't do it, or, oh, that's crazy, that'll never work. But you're still doing it, but you're just not talking to those folks. That's another sign that you might be ready to make a jump. Number 7, your interests change. Again, it's all kind of building on one another. You're awake, you're noticing things, you're thinking about your community. Things that you used to find interesting, you don't anymore. Maybe you used to, love to binge watch Game of Thrones or whatever on the weekends, get on Netflix and binge watch stuff. And maybe now you're still binge watching stuff, but you're watching TED Talks more, or you're watching more of the documentaries on Netflix. And you're just finding yourself reading books that you weren't reading before, and taking interest in webinars or things and articles online that you weren't before. And they're leading you toward things that you had never considered before or thought about before. And you're curious, like this childlike curiosity inside of you is starting to open up and blossom. And it might not be things, you might not be taking interest in things that you're going to create a business around, but you're just being open to new information and you're processing it and you're integrating it into your knowing, into your knowledge base. And you're like, wow, that's really interesting. And you're having different types of conversations with new people around you. Number 8, and this is interesting, you don't suck at anything you care about. And let me explain this one. At some point, you become very good at what you do, whether you're a finance person, a marketing person, maybe you do PR, maybe you're a singer, a writer, whatever it is. At some point after a certain amount of time, you become master at it. And you've spent, I think it was like 10,000 hours to become master at something. And it doesn't challenge you anymore. The good thing about being a master at something is you're expert at it. You're seen as having expertise and it comes to you very naturally. And that's great. The bad thing about it is it doesn't challenge you anymore. And you're looking for that challenge and you don't suck at it. But you also maybe don't care about it as much as you used to. But if you are, maybe you're wanting to, going back to being that artist and you want to see a gallery full of your artwork and you don't know how you know how to paint, you're a master at painting, you're a master at photography, whatever it is, but you're not a master at getting your artwork seen and shown and purchased. But you care about that, and you're learning about marketing. You're learning about how to network with the art community in galleries. You're learning about how getting your artwork into galleries even works. And you might be doing some self-study, and you might be finding courses online to do that, or meeting with mentors, or you join a meetup, or whatever it is. You are spending a great deal of time to learn about it so that you no longer suck, and that you will eventually spend 10,000 hours and become a master at that. So what I mean when I say you don't suck at something you care about, it's really what I'm saying is there's something that you want to know, you don't know it, and because you don't know it, you're terrible at it, but you're willing to put in the time to become great at it. So that's it. Those are the 8 signs that you are ready to make the jump more than you think you are. You're ready to make the jump out of your comfort zone. And I want to pause here and say before we end that you absolutely can do it. Whatever it is that you're daydreaming about, whatever it is that's calling you into the future, other people have done it. You can do it too. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean like you're going to snap your fingers. You're going to have to work at it. It might be more difficult than you thought it was. It might be more easy than you thought it was. It might be very different than you thought it was. And you might find partners along the way to help you. And having a coach and joining and doing self-study and online courses and webinars and reading, self-study and or self-education is going to be absolutely key. And I've talked about this in other videos before, is investing in quality learning. But you can do it. These 8 signs that you're ready to jump out of your comfort zone, it just means that you're in what I call the jump zone. And I'm going to talk about this in a future video, but there's the comfort zone and then what I call you're transitioning into the jump zone. The jump zone is these 8 signs. I'm ready to make a jump. I'm ready to go for it. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to achieve whatever it is that I want. And then once you make the jump, you're in the growth zone. And this is like you're humming along, you're doing that self-learning, that self-education, you're investing in yourself. And then you start to learn, you go up that curve from, sucking to not sucking as much to I'm getting pretty okay at this, right? And then you transition from the growth zone into kind of this just you're coming along and you're kind of in your wheelhouse. You're really getting the hang of it, getting the knack of it. And once you spend, that's when you're going to become master, right? You spend time in there, you become master, and then that's when you transition back into the comfort zone. So it's a cycle. And right now you are ready to kick off this cycle because I promise you, everything that you want and desire is on the other side of fear and foolishness. And fear, if you are fearful about it, that just means it's worth it. If you're scared about it, it means that it's something that means something to you. It's something that's worth something. It has value to you. And you are doing what you are supposed to be doing. Because if you're in the comfort zone, you wouldn't have fear about anything. But growth is accompanied by fear. You can't grow and be, comfortable. They don't coexist. So that's it. Those were the 8 signs that you are ready to make the jump out of your comfort zone. So please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Turn on the alerts. Follow me at I'm Nile Harris on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Nile Harris at LinkedIn. I want us to engage. I want us to talk and have discussion. And please share my messages and these conversations in your community. I look forward to our next meeting.